This, my friends, is Star Wars Battlefront 1, the version released at the end of 2015, developed by DICE, who are more well known for their excellent Battlefield series of games. If you didn't get a chance to play Battlefront, you missed out on a corker of a game, and I'd recommend you pick it up cheap if you can, especially the Game of Year or special editions that include the Season Pass. Star Wars Battlefront has amazing graphics, amazing sound effects and wonderful music, and all the characters and vehicles from the Star Wars era that we want, which is, of course, the original trilogy of Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Primarily infantry based, you fight your way across the snowfields of Hoth, the forests of Endor and the deserts of Tatooine as the brave rebels or the dastardly Empire. You can pilot X-Wings, you can drive AT-STs, and all the while you'll be throwing thermal imploders and jumping around with a lightsaber if you get to be Luke or Darth Vader. Unfortunately though, Battlefront had and has some major flaws. Firstly, the base game was lacking in content, and despite updates and the Season Pass adding more modes, they never added a single player campaign. This didn't really bother me, but the problems that did were based around DICE not making Battlefront Battlefield enough. What I mean is that there was no real squad system. You couldn't party up with your friends and take on the Empire or the rebels together. And that would have made such a difference, as having our own little squad fight around France and Belgium in Battlefield 1 is so much fun. Even if you squad up with random players, the ability to spawn in on each other makes Battlefield 1 much less of a running and dying simulator, which Battlefront often turns into. Another problem is that Star Wars Battlefront can be pretty confusing to play. The beauty of objective-based modes should be that they are straightforward. Fight your way from point A, capture it, and then to point B, as in Conquest or as in Rush, where you've got to blow up NCOMs or telegraph points at the end. In Battlefront, there is no Conquest mode. The closest we get is Supremacy, which is more like Frontlines from Battlefield 1 than anything else. Walker Assault is great fun to play, but the capturing of uplink stations seems contrived, and it's pretty chaotic at times. Compounding all this is the complete lack of a proper big map to look at. All you can ever see is the small mini-map. You just can't hit pause and look at the whole fighting area to plan where you want to go, or to even just see where your teammates are. I found this almost a deal breaker, because it means you've got to work very hard to learn the maps, and maps like Endor, which are just a collection of trees, makes it almost impossible to do so. And it also limits your spawning in points to your starting points, or on top of your partner. Despite all these problems, Battlefront is still fun to play, especially in the Supremacy mode, which is what you're seeing here. And that's because it's obvious where you're meant to be going and where the enemies are probably coming from. Get to the point, Rob, which is what you're thinking right now. My point is that Star Wars Battlefront was fun to play, but Battlefield 1, which came out a few months later, was much better. And that begs the question, if Battlefront 1 is great because of the mistakes and successes DICE learnt from Star Wars Battlefront, does that mean that Star Wars Battlefront 2 will be all the better from the mistakes and successes they've learned from Battlefield 1? For me, that's a really scary thought. Battlefield 1, in my opinion, is an exceptional multiplayer shooter, by far the best of this generation, and the idea that Battlefront 2 might be better, or even just as good, blows my mind. This creates a problem for me because I was dead set against buying another Battlefront game after the first one. Sure, it was and is fun, but one Star Wars shooter is enough in a console generation. With Call of Duty World War II coming out in November, and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds coming out, well, maybe soon, in 2017 and 2018, I was determined to limit my multiplayer gaming to Battlefield 1 and its expansions, Call of Duty World War II, and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds when it comes to PS4. But maybe I need to change my mind. With the concept of a Star Wars shooter that could be as good as, or even better than Battlefield 1, that is incredibly appealing. Adding in the fact that DICE have promised there'll be no season pass for Battlefront 2. All the additional maps and modes will be free to the players of the base game. And this is something that prevents the player base from being split up, and something the Battlefield community have been calling for a long, long time. Now, watching the recently released gameplay of Battlefront 2, the game, of course, as you'd expect, looks and sounds amazing. And there was definitely more of an objective flavour to what we saw. There was no evidence of squad play, but in interviews previously, DICE have stated they want to add squad play to Battlefront to give it more depth. And they've said they'll be implementing a class system that's similar to Battlefield's class system too. This time last year I pre-ordered Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, Titanfall 2 and Battlefield 1. Infinite Warfare was a complete shit show. An awful game that should never have been released. Titanfall 2 had a great story and a fun multiplayer, but just couldn't compete with the sheer brilliance of Battlefield 1. This year I've already ordered Call of Duty World War 2. The Battlefield 1 expansions will be coming in due course. So now, should I add Star Wars Battlefront 2 to the list? Can I risk not getting in early on what could be the greatest Star Wars game ever? Hell, the greatest shooter ever. Could DICE make Star Wars Battlefront 2 better than Battlefield 1? What do you think? I'll leave you with some words from DICE creative director Bernard Damier when he was asked in an interview, "Are you taking more inspiration from Battlefield multiplayer this time out?" And he replied, "We certainly took inspiration from that. I mean, we sit in the same building, right? So if they do something that works really, really well, we peek over and put it on the table." So, Battlefront 2, a Star Wars game inspired by the great aspects of Battlefield 1. I think I've talked myself into buying the game. Anyway, that's enough from me. Hope you enjoyed the video. Put your questions and comments down below. Hit like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more of the same. Thank you very, very much for watching, and I will see you again soon.
Are about to take a control point. Watch out for enemy soldiers.